BXB. It's in the game!
A year ago, I looked at F1 2016. And one of the criticisms I got for that review was me talking about my fandom and my love of the sport as if my pre-existing knowledge of said sport was somehow detrimental to my ability to review the video game. So let me just say this. If you're looking at F1 2017 as a racing game to purchase and you're not familiar with or a fan of F1, get a different racing game. And even I think Codemasters, the developer of F1 2017, would say exactly the same thing to you. This is a hardcore simulation of the most grueling and difficult racing discipline on the planet. That means if you're not aware of it, if you're not a fan of it, sure, you can put it all on easy and bum around the track like it's a bumper car simulator, but it isn't going to be a representation of the sport. Because F1 2017, at its heart, at its core, is a love letter to the sport of F1. And because of that, if you don't have that familiarity, you are not going to take away the most you could from this experience. So because of that, and bearing that in mind, and bearing my love of the Formula 1 sport in mind, this is my review of F1 2017 on the Xbox One. It's obviously available on PS4 and PC as well, but my code that I reviewed this on was on X1. Thank you to Codemaster. They gave me this code nice and early, and I've had plenty of time to play around with it. And as you guys know, and I'll link it to it in the notes to this video as well, but by all means go back and look at my video review of F1 2016, the previous installment, because this is very much an iterative sequel. 2016 was a big step up over 2015, a massive improvement in feature set, in playability, in UI design, and all of that. 2017 is less so. It's less so, but it's still a fantastic experience. Let me just say that. It's even better. But what we got here is some graphical improvements, though nothing dramatic. Some obviously sound improvements and tweaking, but nothing that's going to blow your mind. This still looks a lot like the previous installment of the game. Yes, things like character models are still a bit better, but as you'll probably notice in this video, they're still a little bit creepy looking. But it's cool that the drivers are represented in the game, the team principals are represented in the game. Your avatar that you pick to represent you in career mode is in the game as well. You also have an agent in career mode and things like that. But let's be honest, you're not playing an F1 game to look at the character models. You're not buying an F1 game to take in the scenery around the tracks or the quality of the pit lanes visuals. You really don't care, because all you care about is how the cars feel on the track. And just like in the previous installment, they feel brilliant. Actually, they feel better because of this year's change to the rules and change to the cars. The real rules and real cars that you find on the track that the drivers are really driving. I think the driving experience is better this year than last year. The cars feel like they have more mechanical grip, which means they feel like they stick to the road better, which means the experience of actually driving, of taking the corners, of flying around those tracks at great speed, feel better than they have ever done in recent years. That's for sure. There's other effects that we've seen in this year's rule change. Obviously, the cars look more aggressive. They're more sleek. They're more close to the ground. The back fins have been reduced. The aero is different. Things like that. But I'm not going to spend this review just waxing lyrical about Formula 1 because goddamn it, I could. But I'm going to try and talk about the game more specifically. Like we saw in last year, the inclusion of and importance of practice mode is just as apparent as it was. And if so, it might actually be a little bit more important now, because practice mode is where you get the majority of your R&D points. Now, R&D points in this year's installment in the career mode are more important than ever. Because last year you had a few bits of upgrade and things you could do to the car, but it was fairly linear, it was a little bit limited. Now they've expanded on that concept here, and it creates this interesting situation where you're not just a driver anymore, it's also kind of a Formula 1 management simulator. So you're not just, going out on the track, putting in fast lap times, getting better at your passing, getting better at your following, and that sort of thing. You're actually, you're thinking about the development of your car in career mode over a 10-year span. You might move between teams as well. So there's lots of potential here for development and R&D, and the actual tech tree is more like reminiscent of something you would see in a 4X space game. This huge array of options that unlock as you progress through it in 4 different direct paths, such as, you know, the engine development and the aero development and the drivetrain development and stuff like that. And it's really cool, and it really draws you in, and it gets you to be that much more invested and knowledgeable of the car you're actually driving. And when you start to feel the performance improvements and how it handles on the track is different due to your upgrades, boy oh boy, is it satisfying. It's awesome. So like I've mentioned, that's all in there, that's in there and expanded upon from last year's iterations, which is brilliant. And we've also got the other new big feature this year is these classic races with classic Formula 1 cars from throughout the ages. When I say classic, let me be clear, I'm not talking about the 50s and the 60s, but I'm talking about the modern era of Formula 1 cars. The ones you'll remember, and I imagine what the developers remember as well, when they were growing up, those Formula 1 cars that they saw on TV and what got them into the sport. And it's very much like when I was growing up, I remember Nigel Mansell, and I remember his Williams, and when the Schumacher years when he was super dominant, and I remember his Ferrari, and then you've got those cars, and those type of cars are represented in these classic races. Now they actually show up in a couple of different ways. You can just set them up for yourself to play in multiplayer or the time trial mode, or the various other kind of championship modes you can do. They also come up in the career mode as these invitational weekends that happen between the race weekends, and you do them to raise sort of awareness of your driving standings and your abilities, and, you know, just to have fun. It's just an excuse to try out these cars. And in those modes, you'll have various things you do, from passing challenges to setting time trial speeds to full-on races. There's loads to do in there with those. And they sound different, and they handle oh so differently. It is so weird going around a track. Like you're seeing in a lot of this video footage I've captured is from Melbourne, which is the first Grand Prix of the season. And going around a track like that in a car from a different era that handles completely different after you've done like a full race on this track, maybe in one of the modern cars, it's so strange. It feels, I can't describe it. It sounds different. It feels different. The handling is different. They might feel faster. They might have more grip. They might have less grip, but have more sort of acceleration, less top speed. There's so many different combinations, and it's a whole nother kind of challenge. And it's so much fun, and it gives you so much experimental sort of ability to try out these different things and the different cars. This game is feature rich this year. So we've got the classic cars, we've got the time trials, we've got the full multiplayer suites, we've got the championships you can do, which can be anything from like classic championships to a full season playing as, you know, one of the real F1 2017 kind of people out there, so Lewis Hamilton's or Daniel Ricciardo's. You've got what I think is an amazing career mode. I love this career mode so much. The fact that you can start off, you know, in a smaller team, you know, that's got less ability, that the car's not great, and you can spend a couple of years on it, developing the car, getting it better, you know, getting the higher points, getting those podiums, and then guess what? You'll get an offer from the Mercedes, or you'll get an offer from Ferrari or Red Bull, and they'll ask you to join up with them. I'll admit, you'll see in a lot of the footage, I'm driving a Red Bull. I didn't want to be a Mercedes or Ferrari. I didn't want to be a great. I love the Red Bull team. They're my favourites, and I'm really hoping this year that we see Max finally get you know, some podiums after he comes back from the break, and that his car is going to be a bit more reliable. You know, that's why I chose to take Daniel Ricciardo's place and race with Max Verstappen, who I think is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, young talent in the sport right now. He is amazing. I am digressing. I said I was going to talk about the game, but it's hard not to talk about the sport itself. I am a massive fan. I will admit that. Huge nerd. Can't help it. So, this game does everything last year's did. It's got more fun driving experience because of the changes to the cars. It's got classic modes. It's got championships. It's got everything. It's got everything you could ever want from an F1 game. It is brilliant. It is amazingly good fun. If you are into this sport, well, why else would you be watching this if you weren't into this sport? But if you were into F1, if you've grown up with F1 like I have, or even if you've come to it recently, this is a fantastic video game representation of the sport. And because of all of that, and I do encourage you to go and watch my review from last year as well, because it covers some of the more basic things that you've got in this review. But I didn't want to spend too long, because I would be going, I'm already at about 10 minutes, and I'd be at 20 minutes if I covered everything that was in this game. But trust me when I say, if you want the best video game Formula 1 representation ever, this is the one. Even better than last year. And because of that, I can't score anything less than 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.